Sean Combs, P. Diddy, is sentenced. Finally got his sentence today. We were watching it live, waiting for it.
4 years in prison.
That's the sentence. And we're going to talk about how it went down. How does it affect the man, the victims or complaining witnesses, the family, the judge? Was justice done here? So much we're going to get into. We're going to do a deep dive into this. I can't wait to pick your brain. And we're going to talk about how we got here, how it all started, how we ended up here.
Yeah, Sean Combs dodged a massive bullet. Considering that he was looking at 20 years plus in prison, he didn't get such a bad deal.
Right.
He'll be out in 3+ years, maybe even earlier, maybe even 2 years.
Right.
We could talk about that, how he could get out earlier.
We're going to get into all that. What else?
Cassie was not happy. Cassie said that there's going to be some vindictive retribution from Sean Combs if he's released. And she was scared for her life. She moved out of New York. She didn't want to be there. And she thinks that Sean Combs is going to be coming after her like a bat out of hell for revenge.
Dramatic. So lots of effects from this sentencing on the outside world, on Cassie, on
Mia didn't want to come to court. Mia, one of the girls.
Or the sentencing, you mean?
Yeah, one of the ladies that was
That's
charged
right.
that refused to come to court, wrote a letter to the judge saying basically the prosecution was trying to strong arm her and say things against Sean Combs that was not true.
Yes.
And she felt as though she was telling him, no, you are a victim. No, you are going to testify. You were raped. And she wrote a letter to the judge saying that they are forcing me. And the judge wagged his finger at the defense attorney, said, that wasn't appropriate for you to give me that letter.
Right. He was not happy with that.
No.
With that witness.
No.
Complaining witness? Victim? What do we call her?
He's a complaining witness. They're all complaining witnesses.
So she decided not to show up to the sentencing hearing.
She sent a letter.
The prosecution gave a lot of arguments, brutal arguments for why he should do 11 years or more in prison. The defense came back with a bunch of arguments about why he should time served, let him out today. In fact, they said, he's got plans next week, right? He had plans on the calendar in Miami coming up.
Right.
Prosecution said in the courtroom, that is the height of hubris.
All right.
Defense said, what are you talking about? We have to make plans.
Right.
On the account that he might get out. We have to be hopeful. A lot went down. What other little tidbits?
A lot of crying. All the family members came up to the microphone. Kim Porter's daughter testified that Sean Combs adopted her after Kim Porter died. Basically, she testified she cried.
Mm-hmm. Who else cried?
The whole family came up there and cried. Every single buddy came up there. I mean, not cried per se, but they were very emotional. Kim Porter's child was the one that was really upset.
One of the defense attorneys cried.
I didn't know that.
Yeah. She kind of shed some tears as she spoke about how inspiring he was to her and the entire community in sort of painting this picture about him to, I'm sure, try to minimize the sentence. So a lot went down. We got to dive deep into all of this. But first, if you are a fan of this podcast, hit subscribe and click the notification bell. That way you know when we post.
Click subscribe and the notification bell if you like our podcast.
That way you get alerted whenever we post. We're going to post more.
Well, I can tell you something else that was crazy that happened. You want to tease it up. That was the longest sentencing I've ever seen in 25 years in my practice. I mean, that was like a 6-hour sentencing. It was a marathon sentencing, if you ask me. I never saw something that long. Mm-hmm. In fact, there was even a rumor that it might get trailed over to Monday. It was getting so long. You and I heard that on the news, that it might get carried over. I never heard that happening in any kind of sentencing.
I guess a lot of people spoke, right? A lot of people testified at this sentencing hearing, and we're going to get into that, mostly on his behalf, I want to say.
Yeah.
Which took a long time for Judge Subramanian to actually take all that in and make his decision on the sentence. Do you think he had that sentence pre-planned, or do you think today was pivotal to him making up his final mind?
No, I think it was pre-planned. I told you in the last podcast that he did not let him out on bail. Why didn't he let him out on bail? Because in his mind, he knew that he was going to give him time. Right. I said that on the last podcast. In fact, I'm not trying to toot my own horn. I even said it's going to be, you asked me my prediction. I said it's going to be between 3 and 5 years, which is almost right to the T what he got. He got 4 years, right between the 3 and the 5.
Totally. So dramatic sentencing. And I wonder what was going through Sean Combs' mind, if he feels like he got what he deserved, if he feels like the sentence fell short of what it might have been, if he feels like it's unjust and way too long and he doesn't deserve it. His own psyche.
Oh, he said in a letter, he wrote a letter to the judge. He basically said in not so many terms that, it was his fault because he was a drug addict at the time and he was a different person at the time. But the problem is that he was still committing crimes after he was indicted. You remember Jane, one of the witnesses that testified, the complaining witnesses said the freak-offs were still happening after he got arrested. So what does that mean? He's basically telling the judge, this past year, I've been changed.
I was going to ask how long.
Just a year.
So he's been incarcerated, awaiting trial and awaiting sentencing for a year?
Yes. Well, He was arrested, I think we did this podcast in October 2024, right? Mm-hmm. So it's been about a year or 14 months that has been in there. And most of the letter that he wrote, I felt was a little self-serving. It basically didn't acknowledge remorse. And the reason why he didn't acknowledge remorse is because, Tony, they're going to appeal this case. So if you admit a crime, it actually hinders your appellate process. So even if you wanted to say, I'm sorry, as his attorney, I would advise him not to say that because that would take away the power of a reduction in sentence for the appeal.
Interesting.
So he had to skate a very thin line, a thin ice
difficult
to basically say, look, I understand what I did. What I did was wrong. Please don't throw away the key. And he even said in the beginning, I know that you want to make an example of me. Sean Combs said that.
I saw that.
But please make an example out of me in the right way. Let me go out to society. Let me give back to the community. And the judge ultimately said, you could still do that, but you still need to be punished. He didn't want to let him go after just 14 months because he thought that his prior conduct, which was interesting, he used his prior conduct to punish him.
We're going to get to that.
And we're going to get to that. So he used that prior Cassie Ventura hotel situation and what happened with Jane. Even though those charges, he was not found to be guilty, he considered it. Not really on the record, but and I know in the back of his mind, that was something that he was considering before he sentenced Sean Combs.
I think so. I totally trust your instinct on that. But let's take people back to where this began, where this all started. That one headline that came across all of our news feeds. Remember that?
Yeah.
That video that flashed across the screen of him physically abusing Cassie Ventura in the lobby of the hotel. That's kind of when it's kind of the straw that broke the camel's back of his existing empire, right? It's when everything started crashing down.
The dam broke.
Yeah, what happened there? Take us back. Let's remind everybody.
Well, in my opinion, simply, he was threatened to get sued by Cassie Ventura, and Sean Combs called that bluff. The day she filed the lawsuit, he settled. The problem with that, as I said on the American Crime Podcast, is that people were watching. The government watches these things, and they're not going to ignore an allegation like that, especially when you file it in federal court, because you're basically taking a bullhorn and you're saying, I've been a victim. Something bad happened to me. And then what happened after that? Complaint was filed, Tony. Coincidentally, criminal charges were filed.
Mm-hmm. There was another. Being
sarcastic, but that's what happened.
There was another complainant to a man who also filed
Little Rod.
He also filed a lawsuit after Cassie.
Yeah. So a few people did. A
few civil lawsuits broke.
Right.
And just as a thought experiment, just out of curiosity, if you're his criminal defense attorney and you have a time machine, so you go back to when Cassie first calls and says, hey, Diddy, what does she say? Does she say, I'm about to file a complaint? Does her lawyer call and say, we're about to bring a civil case? Do you want to settle it? Do they give him that opportunity? What do you advise him back in time? 2020 vision.
So the procedure is you get a demand letter. It's a standard letter that says that we're going to sue you because of the following allegations. However, we want to settle. If you want to settle, here's your number.
And that was probably done, right?
Yes.
And it wasn't public.
No.
You and I didn't know about that. It did not come across our newsfeed. So Diddy got that.
Yes.
Then he had a decision to make. Do I settle with Cassie now or do I play hardball?
Correct.
What did he do?
He played hardball.
Right.
For a little while, but then he settled.
But as soon as he played hardball, even if it was less than 48 hours, she then filed the civil suit,
right,
which then disclosed the facts,
right,
and for the government to read and go, oh, we're bringing criminal cases.
And Combs never thought that was going to happen because he had those videos, those freak-off videos, so he called her bluff. And that's the reason why Cassie said on the stand, he never thought I'd do that because of the videos. Cassie testified, I have these videos. These videos will come out if you ever do anything to me. So he was holding that as sort of blackmail.
So he tried to blackmail her or extort her or hold as leverage over her head.
That's what Cassie said.
The videos that she had of her in the freak off.
Right. And because of that, the big mistake is my advice to him would have been, if I went back in that time capsule, I said, Sean, let's settle this thing. You don't want to have your blood in that water, because once that blood is in the ocean, the sharks are going to come swimming after you.
The federal sharks.
Federal sharks, civil sharks, all the sharks. They're going to be coming out.
State sharks came.
State sharks.
Shit, dude.
All
the governmental sharks showed up.
Yeah. So, all the sharks showed up, and that's what happened. So the way you avoid the sharks is you pay the man. You say, here's the envelope. Goodbye.
You pay
good riddance.
Cassie's attorney.
Yeah.
How much would he have paid? 20, 30 million?
Well, I think he paid 30 million. I think she disclosed it was like $30 million total, but he could probably settle for 10, 15 million dollars or something like that.
And then none of this might have.
None of this would happen, in my opinion. It wouldn't happen.
It never would have.
He would have dodged it. He was penny wise, pound foolish.
Right. So next thing he knows, all his homes are searched.
Yeah.
All of his evidence is taken in and confiscated. Videos, hours and hours of freak off videos and maybe other videos we don't know about. Are there videos we never found out about?
No, I think they have all the videos. They sifted through it. And don't forget the main star of this case, baby oil. 10,000 bottles of baby oil.
Right. Baby oil starring in the Diddy trial.
If I would have known that he had that much baby oil, I might have invested in Johnson & Johnson.
Right. Baby oil did make all the headlines, right?
Yeah.
Every news story was about how much baby oil.
Yeah.
It was just such a meme. So easy to say, so easy to pass around. It memeified baby oil. I'm sure baby oil sold a ton of bottles.
And not 10,000 bottles at a time. Whatever he got was ridiculous.
So yeah, the baby oil thing came out. And then next thing we know, he's charged with multiple crimes, 4 major categories of crimes, right?
RICO, force, fraud, or coercion. And I forgot the other 2 counts.
So the biggest one being RICO.
That was
racketeering and influencing corruption organization.
Yes.
Like
a mafia. They said he was a solo mafia. The bad boy was a mafia organization. He was running the mafia. The reason they did that is because they got R. Kelly with that, but it didn't work with P. Diddy.
And Young Thug, they tried.
They tried with Young Thug too.
Didn't work.
This didn't work. What the government is doing, and I'll tell the government right now, I hope they're listening. Stop weaponizing the laws and stop overcharging people just because you can.
Right.
There should be some oversight committees, I said this to you before, that review these kinds of cases before they're filed, because I'll tell you something, and this is controversial.
So you're saying they stretched with the RICO.
I'll tell you something that's controversial. If Sean Combs did not have his defense team, if it was anybody else, he would have been convicted if he was a regular guy. Absolutely convicted. He had a $50 million defense team. That's why he got the best possible defense. But not everybody's Sean Combs. What happens if you get charged? How are you going to defend yourself with something like that?
And they're less likely to throw RICO at somebody unless you're like a real big fish. Am I right?
Yet.
Unless they want to stretch the definition of RICO further and further, diffuse it even more to where they could use it on anybody they want.
I think now that the government got spanked, now that Comey, the prosecutor, got spanked, hopefully they'll look at this case and say, let's not do that again, because we learned a lesson in the Sean Combs case. We went too far. Hopefully the government's listening and taking notes.
What's the quick lesson for them to take?
Don't overcharge. Be fair.
Specifically to RICO?
Any crime.
But
don't overcharge.
Seems like they're trigger happy with the RICO.
Now they're doing RICO with Giuliani. Oh, you're going to have to cancel that. You're going to have to take that out. They're doing it with him. They're doing it with Young Thug. They did it with R. Kelly.
What is it about RICO? It seems like because it's ambiguous, it's broad enough. It's like you're an organization. Okay. You're corrupted. Okay. You're racketeering.
Yeah.
Meaning you're
bullying, you're forcing, you're threatening.
Using wrongful influence to get crimes to be committed by other people.
Yeah. They're basically saying the whole thing is toxic. Bad boy, the entire thing from ground up. Look,
it's a big conspiracy.
With Suge Knight, maybe with Suge Knight you can make that argument because he had a lot of like shady people working for him for a very long time, gang members, and he beat people up in the studio while allegedly while they were recording songs. Maybe with Suge Knight, that is the anomaly or the exception to the rule. But most other people, I can't think of another legitimate person in the music industry that you could actually say is fronting as a mafia organization, essentially.
Right. Was he alleged to have hung Vanilla Ice upside down out a balcony?
Yeah, Suge Knight did.
That was I don't know.
Yeah,
Was he convicted of that? I don't know if he was convicted of that.
No, but that could be a prior. They could have brought that stuff against Suge Knight. That would make more sense. And
he's a little more gangster.
That's right. He's like
New York Italian gangster, Chicago gangster.
So you're getting into this. So the reason I think they brought the RICO against him, I firmly believe it is because of that attempted murder charge and that nightclub that he won that charge years ago when Ben Braffman was the attorney. Things came out later on that there was another shooter that went down for Sean Combs for 10 years. And I think he's running for mayor or a president in some country. He's from I forgot the kid's name. He's a rapper. And the victim in that case said Sean Combs was the one that shot me. I saw him. So I think there's so much mischief, so much dirt, skeletons in his closet that the FBI and the Department of Justice said, you know what, we had enough. Let's go after this guy. It was just too much for them to look away. Does that make sense?
It does, yeah.
Basically, it was a culmination of things that he brought, negative karma that caused the prosecutors to say, we can't ignore this anymore. This guy's a bad guy. We got to take our shot and go after him. They took their shot. They lost.
The kids might say he was farming negative aura.
Yeah.
I don't know if they say that, but
yeah.
I'm changing what they say.
Right.
But he was aura farming in the wrong way.
Sure.
Just there was a glow of criminality around him.
Right.
Not even specific, but enough to where the authorities were triggered and tempted to try to hit him with as hard a charge as they can.
Yeah. Yeah, he doesn't. It's not like Sean Combs had nothing in his background, squeaky clean. Like there's a distinction between Sean Combs, in my opinion, and OJ. When OJ got arrested, it was shocking to all of us because the guy was squeaky clean. Sean Combs was never squeaky clean. We knew Sean Combs was in and out of trouble for many years. To me, that's a big difference when it comes to the government investigating you.
Let's do another quick thought experiment. So
right.
Sean Combs gets off relatively light, as we'll get into. Compared to what he was charged with, he got off relatively easy today. What if you're another kid from the hood, Sean Smith, like you mentioned, you don't have a legal team. What happens to that kid in this scenario? And there's a couple girls that are victims, maybe more than a few, a man as well who was trafficked. All the same facts. Baby oil, as maybe not as voluminous, but still some baby oil. What happened? You're saying if he couldn't afford the best legal defense, what would he be looking at?
Well, first of all, I am going to put a footnote on and say everybody that cannot afford an attorney is given one. Mm-hmm. Public defenders are good attorneys, by the way.
Yeah.
He would get a public defender, and he would get a very high level, high skilled public defender. And I'm not disparaging public defenders, but this particular case needs a team. Like OJ had a team. You need a small basketball team to defend these kinds of cases.
Why?
Because there's too many parts to it. Everybody needs to it's like a play.
You're playing defense. It's like they might hit you here, they might hit you there. You need people everywhere.
Well, you do, because you have think of it like a play. And in this play, you have different experts and you have different people. Everybody's got to be assigned a part. I can't possibly know everybody's cross-examination questions. I can't possibly thoroughly know everybody's statements. So you got to assign certain lawyers for certain people. It makes it easier. And sometimes lawyers have better talent at certain things than other lawyers. For example, I'm a closer. I like to do closing argument. I'm an excellent cross-examiner. But I might not be good on direct as, let's just say, my associate who's more suave and it's a female and she does better questions. So you assign... think of it like hitmen. You want to assign the right hitman for the right job. Does that make sense?
It does. And you're kind of, as a coach, whoever's putting this legal team together,
right.
Maybe it's Diddy or maybe it's an expert he relies on.
Yeah.
You're trying to put the right players in the right place. Some of that has to do with getting the sympathy from the jury, right?
Of course.
Some of that has to do with connecting emotionally with the jury.
Yes.
Sometimes you feel like a lady might be better in a certain position, depending on the makeup of the jury, maybe. I mean, how do you think about gender? That's kind of interesting to me. I noticed a lot of the criminal defense attorneys today were female. A lot of
half of them were.
Even more than half.
But you know what? The entire prosecution was female.
Female?
Entire prosecution was female.
What's the logic behind that from a strategy point of view?
I think they were sending a message that we're here to stand up for women's rights, that women should be heard. In fact, Judge Subramanian said, I wanted you to know, Cassie and Mia, your voice was heard. So they want to project the image of strong women that are not going to take the brutality of misogynistic men like Sean Combs anymore.
Got it. I mean, and I'm trying to sort of peel the veil back in terms of the strategic thinking from the legal team here. It resonates more when there's a woman talking about it, as opposed to a bunch of men sitting there telling you about women's rights. So,
and who was the opening salvo? Who did the opening salvo for Sean Combs in the opening statement?
Comey's daughter.
That's no, for Sean Combs.
Oh, Tenny
Garagos. Female.
Yes.
Do you think that was an accident, or do you think
no? None of this is an accident. So that you don't pay millions of dollars for accidents.
So the reason they picked Tenny for the opening salvo or the opening statement is to soften the blow, to give the subconscious message: I'm a female too.
Yes.
Don't let them fool you. Just because they're females doesn't make my client guilty. I'm a female too, and I'm here to say that my client's not guilty. I'll tell you why.
Strategic sense, because she's there to soften the blow of Combs in terms of the assault he committed on camera.
And she admitted that in the opening. She said he did the domestic violence, but we're not here for domestic violence. She took the weak part of the case and embraced it. You know, as lawyers, we're told if the facts are weak, embrace it. Say, yeah, that happened. It's bad.
Own that. Own
it. It's bad. They owned that domestic violence and they took it and they diffused it, and they had the jury look within a microscopic lens at just the counts that mattered. The counts that mattered was RICO. It was an overcharge. I knew it was an overcharge.
We both felt, everybody, there was a gut feeling in the air that seemed like a reach to go to the criminal racketeering organization for this record label.
I thought so too, but what shocked me was the force, fear, coercion, because I'll tell you, I was duped in the sense that I thought he was going to be found guilty for that, because how can they ignore the video of him dragging Cassie at the Intercontinental Hotel? I thought that was so compelling that they would find him guilty for the force, fraud, or coercion. They didn't, because I believe the messages that Cassie was texting caused them to believe that she was a willing participant.
And by them, you're talking about the jury now. The jury, who was always the ultimate fact finder in our system, who's there to say, did he or did he not? And so, yeah, you're saying that second charge just below RICO, but still a very serious charge. RICO was out.
Yeah. The forced fraud or coercion, I thought it
forced fraud and coercion.
I thought that was
for sexual purposes.
For sexual purposes, was alleged. Correct.
You feel like that they might have got him on that, especially with the brutality we all witnessed on video. But then Cassie kind of had these texts she sent and a happy birthday video she made for him, where she was very loving and very appreciative and said, "I love you, I miss you," and things like that. And maybe the jury. The jury found the facts. We're just assessing what they did. It seems like that sort of countered her own argument.
That's what the jury found, I believe, because they found him not guilty on those charges. Initially, they were hung on that for a while. Remember, you and I were watching.
They took time.
They took their time. Somebody didn't make up their mind, so there were some holdouts. And I guessed, and I'm guessing based on my experience, that the holdouts were exactly what you and I thought. Wait a second. Isn't that force, fraud, or coercion? But then they probably said, but wait, Cassie's texting, setting up the freak-offs, getting the prostitutes, paying the prostitutes. After the sex thing, I had a great time. So that's kind of confusing to the jury, right? They don't know how to parse what's real or what's not real. In a sense that, at what point in time did you feel that there was force, fraud, or coercion?
How forced are you?
Right.
If you're texting happy birthday, I love you, I miss you.
Right.
I may be putting words in her mouth here. I'm paraphrasing.
You are paraphrasing.
The spirit of what it was she seemed full of gratitude for this man, full of appreciation, full of love, and full of soft. She had some kind of bond with him for sure.
She loved him. She said it.
She loved him.
Yeah. She might have felt scorned from the fact that she knew that when Sean Combs cheated on her, and she found out about it with that young Miami lady that they were having an affair. That's when the crap hit the fan. That's when she decided to, from her home in Connecticut, get a lawyer. So it just seemed to me the timing was suspicious, because why now? Why now? Because you just found out that the guy's not going to be with you. You feel played. Okay, we got that. You feel played. But does that make it a crime for what he did to you? Just because you have regret doesn't make it a crime, right? Right. And I think they had deep regret about doing it. There's no doubt. But in my mind, that's not a crime.
Right. And at that moment she turned, which maybe makes the jury think, hey, this is a little bit more of a hell hath no fury situation, as opposed to she's just been sort of like waiting out the clock to file charges for this crime, maybe before the statute of limitations?
I think she did it right before the statute expired, or like a month before, if I'm not mistaken.
Right. So then the jury has to, so then that threw the case into this psychological analysis of like, was she actually forced to be in all of these scenarios, these freak offs, these sexual performances in front of the camera using baby oil with photography? And was she forced, or did she do that willingly? And then, you know, there's compelling psychological evidence, we've discussed it before, sure, that it may seem like Cassie wants to be there. She may even say things like, I love you and I miss you. She may even text those or film herself performing those statements, but in actuality, she's being forced. She's not.
That's what the expert said.
The expert.
Her name was Dawn Hughes. She said that. She explained the mental psychology, but the jury didn't buy it.
I'm sure there was an expert opposite her too, right?
I don't think so.
No, they didn't. The defense didn't bring an expert to counter that?
I don't recall that.
Don't they always bring experts on?
Not necessarily. If you do a good cross on the expert, you don't need that.
Got it.
But by the way, it was a blind testimony. You know what blind testimony is?
No. What is that?
It means that she never met Cassie. She's just giving hypotheses and theories. And they crossed her on that. They were like, you never met Cassie. You never sat down with her. You've done therapy before, right? Wouldn't you agree with me that therapy is more factually based when you talk to the person, get information from the person, you have more of an understanding of what's going on? You didn't do that with Cassie, did you? You're just giving us your hypotheses in this case. So that's what the cross was about. They were just telling the jury, this lady doesn't know what she's talking about. She's just spewing off like academic nonsense in court.
Wow.
I mean, not nonsense, but actual valid things. But you know, you got to present that to the jury that, hey, listen, what does she know? She hasn't really sat down with these people. She hasn't really gone over anything.
Right. And
she's just a hired gun saying whatever she wants to say.
And nobody can really put themselves, like, how it's hard to feel the pain. Well, it's hard to feel the damage that can cause unless you're the defendant sitting there, not speaking, and watching a psychologist give expert testimony on your mindset. No, I'm sorry.
It's going to be on Cassie's mindset.
It would be on Cassie's mindset.
Yeah, and she's basically testifying that the reason why Cassie didn't leave is because there's a stronghold on her. There's two types of holds. A physical hold where somebody says you're not going anywhere, and there's a mental hold. A mental hold, she said, for example, if somebody's paying for your bills, you don't work, they could say, well, if you don't do this, X, Y, and Z, I'm not going to give you your rent this month, which is what she was contending, that he was paying $10,000 rent a month.
Right.
She was scared that he wasn't going to pay anymore, that she didn't have a job. He pulled her recording contracts away. She was pretty much financially naked. She didn't know what to do at that point. So that's what Dawn Hughes presented as the mental stranglehold. But, you know, the jury could think, so what? Pick up your boots, strap on your boots, and move on. You don't have to be with this guy, you know? There's a lot of guys out there, a lot of fish in the sea. You're in Connecticut right now. He's here right now. So to me, I'm very jaded in that sense as a criminal defense attorney. I got a lot of questions that I could present her and poke at her, which is what the defense attorneys did. They made an argument that, look, she could have left any time she wanted. She stayed because she loved him. And now she's testifying against him because she has PSR, post-sex regret.
Got it. But it couldn't have been that cut and dry for these jury members. It has to be confusing.
It wasn't.
Because you're seeing this, just the video of her getting beat down by him.
Terrible.
So dramatically, so violently in the hallway of that hotel. It's like Dawn Hughes, as a psychoanalyst, was trying to create the narrative that the mental version of that beatdown was happening as well. Pulling her contracts, pulling her finances, threatening her. Yeah. Not physical, but the mental analog, that mental version of the coercion, the violent, the control, the mental version of the emotional analogy of grabbing her by the hair and pulling her, or grabbing her by the back of the hoodie and pulling her across the floor. Now, let's remind people, why didn't they just come after him for the physical version of that? The very version we all saw on tape. Why was it? Let's remind people.
Easy question.
Yeah.
Easy answer. The time ran out.
Statute of limitations.
Bye-bye.
That was it.
She didn't call the police quick enough. She waited. She fell asleep. You snooze, you lose.
So had she done that, had she brought the case earlier, she would have been able to just get him on domestic violence or sexual abuse or physical assault, you name it. Battery. Right, criminal violation.
He probably would have done some jail time just on the beating alone. Not as much as he's doing now, because if he brought him in state court, On something like that, he would have done maybe a year in jail with some therapy.
Nothing major.
Nothing major. He would have had a felony conviction for sure. He would have had suspended prison time for sure. He would have done anger management, drug classes. Yeah, I mean, typically that's what I would get. I mean, if you're telling me the math, Sean Combs, assault, hotel equals 1 year max. That's off the top of my head. I'm like a real estate agent. I could appraise it right away like that. Does that make sense?
It does. So, but in any regard, they didn't bring that. The SOL ran out. Limitations ran out. That case is burnt. So here they are.
That's why they backdoored it, Tony. I told you that in this podcast. They backdoored this case because that ran out, and the only way they could bring that in is by reviving it through RICO, because you need to have predicate acts. So they use that as a predicate act, and they backdoored it.
Right.
That's the reason they went after Sean Combs. They went after him. They said, well, you got away with it years ago, but we could bring it back in federal court. We could file an indictment and do a predicate act. Sneaky son of a bitches.
Okay, what was
hate the government for that reason.
What was the predicate act exactly?
The beating. They're using the beating as a predicate act, and the other things that he did.
So, like you said, a backdoor. It's like you're legally not allowed to get him for that because the statute of limitations has run out.
That's right.
We have public policy reasons why we have statute of limitations.
I could talk to you about that.
Right. Like some people would say, why would you ever let the time run out on a crazy...
Because people forget, and you don't want to walk around 30 years wondering whether you're going to get arrested.
So
everybody should have a time deadline. How would you like if somebody just tapped you right now? By the way, 40 years ago, you did this. We're going to put you under arrest. You're going to say, what the hell? Why didn't this person bring it on earlier? I don't even know who this person is.
Right. I don't remember any of the...
I don't have my witnesses anymore. I don't have
calendar's gone.
Evidence is gone. That's a violation of your due process rights, which is under your 14th Amendment of the Constitution.
Right. RICO seemed like an overstretch. They did not convince the jury.
Correct.
Forced, what's it called? Forced coercion?
Yeah.
The jury didn't buy it.
Force, fraud, or coercion, yeah.
We feel like it's probably because of Cassie's remarks or Cassie's affection towards him, why the jury didn't feel like she was forced. So they got him on the trafficking. Let's talk about what they did get him on.
They got him on transportation. Transportation of prostitution under the Mann Act, M-A-N-N, which was used back in the day 100 years ago for white slavery, prostitution.
Why did they need the Mann Act at all? For crossing state lines?
Yeah, they basically got the prostitutes across state lines. The defense attorneys made an argument. It wasn't really for sex. It was for their time.
Or the performance on video. With all the baby oil, the lighting, and all the camera work. It's like a music video shoot almost.
That was the argument. They said the argument was, by the way, the sex was ancillary. It was auxiliary. In other words, it wasn't part of the main reason they came. We just happened to have sex later. No, we were just rubbing baby oil at that point. Which is not illegal. And we called these people to entertain us.
And then we fell in love and
then we made love, and that shouldn't be counted.
Hard to believe.
And the judge was like, "Give me a break. I know you brought him there to have sex,
right?
For sexual pleasure." That he didn't buy that argument,
right?
So that's what he got convicted. He got convicted of the transportation charge. He could have got low term on that transportation charge, but he didn't give low term. They wanted to give him 14 months. Diddy's attorneys, and the prosecution wanted to give 11 years. So, like Samson in the Bible, God split the baby in two, or wanted to. He split it, right?
Okay.
Is that what the Bible said? It will split the baby in two. And Samson said, no, you can have it. And he said, oh, you must be the rightful owner, from the Old Testament. Anyway, take that out. I'm not sure.
On the transportation charge?
Yeah.
So what was the low end and high end on the federal guidelines for sentencing?
It was low end, I believe, was
3 to 5.
No.
5 to 7.
I don't.
It was roughly 5 to 7 was the recommended range.
I don't know. Yeah, it might have been 5 to, yes, the probation said 5 to 7 was a recommended range.
Yeah. Is that a federal sentencing guideline thing or the probation?
The federal sentencing guidelines put it at like a 24. So there's numbers that go up and down. I got to go over the numbers, but you add more and you drop more.
Yeah, you have circumstances that help him, circumstances that hurt him in terms of sentencing. The judge has to weigh all that.
That's right.
Starting point and then find his way to the final number.
Yeah, but by the way, I could give Diddy free legal advice how I could chop 1 year off his time right now. 1 year. Diddy, if you're listening, there's a residential drug program in prison. If you go to that, it's called RDAP, Residential Drug and Alcohol Program. If he subscribes to RDAP, which he qualifies for because all of this happened, supposedly he was under drugs, he will get 1 year chopped off automatically. 1 year for that. Now, Diddy, if you're listening, if you're a good boy and you do milestone programs when you go to prison and you do these other programs, you'll get 15% chopped off on top of that. So on 41 months, you deduct 15%, and then 1 year on top. So on 4 years is already looking at 3 years. And on 3 years, he might be out even earlier than that. So we're talking about he'll be out in 2.5 years. Not
Whoa.
bad.
So he went into court today expecting the worst case scenario of how much time?
Well, he was looking at, in theory, 20 plus years, possibly.
20 plus years.
Possibly.
And then he got what?
What he got
effectively, he may be out
50
how soon?
months. 50 months.
How soon could he be out?
Right, so he got, so let me
You just did the math.
He got 40 months, which is, 50 months, 4.1 years.
Yeah.
Let's make it an even 4 years, right? To do the math. 10% of 4 years is 4. So minus 4 months, make it 5 months or 6 months. So now you're at 3.5. Take another year away for RDAP, that's 2.5 years. So he could be out in 2.5 years or less.
Got it.
Not bad. Not bad considering that he's looking at 20 years. This guy dodged a massive bullet.
But that's ultimately for getting convicted, not for RICO, not for coercion or forced coercion, but for trafficking for purposes of sex.
Not really just for that.
He walked away with a lot less time than he might have.
Yes. Even though he wanted to go home, in reality, defendants always want a lot less than what the reality is. But it's a very fair sentence considering. Now, I know what you're thinking. Why would he get 4 years or 50 months in prison for prostitution? That seems ridiculous. In my point of view, it is ridiculous. If you just take the act itself in a microcosm and you say, how much time should somebody get for flying somebody from Vegas to California to have sex? If you told me you're going to do 5 years for that, I would tell you that's absolutely ridiculous. But that's what Sean Combs got. And the reason he got that is because the judge had a political decision to make. He didn't want to seem weak. He didn't want to seem like he wasn't listening to the females. So he backdoored, in my opinion, his prior conduct and he wrapped it up and he said, because of the culmination of all the bad things you've done, I'm going to tack on time. But there was a new law that just passed.
When?
November.
Okay. Tell us what prior conduct is. It's just bad acts you've done in the past, criminal violations that you may not have been convicted for, or did you need to be convicted?
Yeah, so in the past, up until October of last year, you were allowed to use prior bad conduct. So even if you were acquitted, check this out. Look how unfair the law is, people. Even though you were acquitted, just like in what Subramanian did, he used Sean Combs' acquitted charges, the conduct, to punish him more severely for the crime that he was actually convicted of. Not fair. That's like me telling you, I was charged with murder and drinking and driving. Just making this up. I was acquitted of the murder charge.
So you're saying he was acquitted,
yes.
Meaning the jury found, in fact, he did not commit that.
Yes. And just for the legal geeks out there, here's a little legal geek break. If you want to know what happened back in November 2024, the sentencing guidelines were amended to exclude acquitted conduct from the definition of, quote, relevant conduct in the United States, Section 1B 1.3. So acquitted conduct can no longer be used. So in this argument, the jury rejected the evidence and acquitted Combs of the conduct, but the judge still backdoored it.
What was that conduct?
The prior Cassie Ventura hotel incident.
Got it. That exact incident. Let's paint this picture for people.
That's part of it. There's other things too. So, Jane also testified. The
physical abuse, sexual assault, all of this kind of violent battery on these women was the prior bad act, the prior bad conduct.
Yes.
But the jury didn't reach any fact finding on that. Help me understand, because the statute of limitations had passed anyway.
They didn't, but they found him not guilty of the RICO charge. They found him not guilty of the coercion fraud charge.
True.
That had to do with what happened in the hotel room, right? That had to do the forced fraud.
That tied
into it. What does the prostitution have to do with the beating? Nothing.
Nothing, no.
But he got punished for it anyway.
So somehow through this back door, the judge let this idea of that battery, that prior bad conduct, leak into his decision.
Yeah, he said it's
of sentencing.
Even though the law just changed, and I'm sure they're going to appeal it based on that. Absolutely.
So the law just changed, saying, "Hey, judge, you can't do that anymore."
Yeah, and he did it.
He did it.
And Sean Combs and Mark Agnifico and all of the Tenny Garagos, you guys got a ground to appeal.
So
Great ground.
Am I understanding this correctly? Yeah. although Diddy did pretty well, he got pretty minimal time, relatively speaking. You think he actually might have got even less time had the judge not used prior bad conduct
Yes.
in sentencing him?
Yes.
So the judge should not have used that prior bad conduct. What was the prior bad conduct?
The Cassie Ventura hotel beating.
Whoa. That beatdown, that aggressive, violent, physical assault.
Yes.
Which they couldn't bring the case because that was statute of limitations. It had passed.
So they backdoored it.
But you're saying the judge still took that into consideration in sentencing him today?
Yes. I listened to it. He took the parts of what he did. He said, although I'm not, he was very squirrely about it. He said, although I'm not using it per se against you. In essence, he did. He talked about it, even though he said, I'm not going to use it against you. But then he talked about it and he did it anyway. So it was a double talk.
Is he allowed to do that?
No.
But since when?
Since November 1st, 2024.
So in 2023,
there's a new law, USSG section 1B 1.3 says that the guidelines were amended so that they were to exclude acquitted conduct from the definition of relevant conduct. Right there. In fact, Sean Combs' attorneys put it right there inside for the judge to see that you can't do that. And he did it.
So that was a law that the Congress passed?
It was a law that was passed by Congress. Correct?
So that's legislation.
It's a legislative bill that
trying to put a little bit of a limit on the judicial branch.
Yes.
Saying, hey, judges, if you're going to sentence someone, you're not supposed to look at prior bad conduct that a jury said they didn't do.
That's right. It's not fair to convict somebody of something that was already acquitted, and you shouldn't use even the prior bad acts to use that to enhance sentencing.
But you know what?
Sense. It's such a bullshit law. Bullshit.
Which part?
Using prior bad conduct where
it's
you
been
were acquitted is a violation of your 14th Amendment right of due process.
Okay, but
you cannot backdoor something where you've been acquitted. And this is something that they should have changed years ago. This is a draconian law.
I'm with you.
Yeah.
But isn't it different here? Isn't it different with Cassie? Because there were prior bad conduct, right? In the hotel lobby, right?
Right.
The beatdown.
There was.
The jury didn't find him guilty of that. Maybe because of SOL, maybe because
there wasn't a charge for that, the beatdown. There was no domestic violence charge. That was just
you're saying they
fraud,
kind of
coercion.
But you're saying they kind of acquitted him of that bad conduct through the RICO acquittal.
Yes.
But
part of it, yes.
Except that we saw him do it on tape.
Yeah, but the crime is not being charged. Tenny Garrigo said, we're not here because he committed domestic violence.
I get it.
He's guilty of that.
But why can't the judge be aware, be conscious of the fact that we all saw him do that prior bad act?
You didn't try him in a court of law. He didn't get his due process. He didn't have his notice and opportunity to be heard. Maybe he was under influence of drugs. That could have been a defense in the case. Maybe he had mental insanity, temporary mental insanity. There was a lot of defenses that he could have had that were never presented. We can't assume he's guilty, Tony.
I get what you're saying. I get what you're saying. The video should not speak for itself. It needs to go through the judicial process.
It speaks for itself, but you need to flesh it out in court.
You need to flesh it out. You need people speak. Yeah, he could have been out of his mind.
I'll give you a perfect example. Sorry to float my own boat. You saw the Dodger Stadium fight that I had, right? Yeah. Where the guy punches the guy in the face on the floor.
Yes, big case.
And then the video spoke for itself. 900 million people thought my client was guilty. 900 million.
Because they watched the news and it looked really, really bad.
But I put it into context.
Right.
That's what you have to do.
Got it.
So you have to. So it's not fair
for
somebody to now say, "Oh, I'm going to charge you with that conduct," until I'm able to explain. Yeah, it looks guilty, but let me explain to you what happened. So Sean Combs has that same right to say, "Yeah, I beat her up, but there's some defenses that I had an opportunity to explain."
Makes sense.
Again, I want the people to know. I think Sean Combs is a dastardly person. I'm not on his team from a human perspective. But as a criminal defense attorney, everybody deserves the same rights, whether you're guilty or not, because that's what our forefathers, the principles of this country was founded upon. And we got to keep it that way. He's going to actually probably appeal now. He's probably going to be back in court in the future for some credits and time and other things. And I guarantee you there's going to be other motions that are going to be filed. They're going to file appellate motions, try to get him out. It's not over right now. They're going to still fight.
Have they talked about where he's going to do his time?
Well, that's the thing. Wherever he goes, it's going to be a lot better than where he is now. Where he is right now, the Metropolitan Detention Center in Brooklyn is one of the worst places. They call it hell on earth. They have no clean water. The toilets, I mean, everybody's going to the toilet in front of each other in a small room. 25 people look at you while you're handling your business. You got to shower in front of everybody. You got to stand naked in front of everybody. Sean Combs is being subjected to drugs inside the jail. He actually wrote that in his letter. I see drugs happening all the time, but I'm not doing it. So it's a terrible place to be. But when he goes to prison, he's going to be in Disneyland, especially if he does RDAP. Sean Combs, if you do RDAP, you will go to Disney prison. What's a Disney prison? A Disney prison is like, I'm going to give you an example, Terminal Island.
What's RDAP?
A residential drug alcohol program that you could do. So they'll send you to a nice prison where you'll have racquetball and you'll have swimming pool and all that good stuff. Or I could say where the Menendez brothers are right now in Terminal Island, right by the water. Very, you get an ocean breeze. You got basketball courts. He might be somewhere like that. It's going to be a lot better than where he is right now, night and day. It's going to be like the Ritz-Carlton compared to where he is right now.
Wild.
If you like what you had to hear, click here for another episode and click here for more content.